Shadow Defector, the woman who broke out of the Kim regime's secret surveillance machine. Pyongyang, December 1987. A young woman sits inside an interrogation room in Seoul, with a cyanide-laced cigarette still burning a memory into the back of her throat. Minutes earlier, on a tarmac in Bahrain, she had bitten down on a hidden capsule, the same way she had been trained to do since she was 19 years old. Her partner, a much older man posing as her father, succeeded in killing himself before South Korean and Bahraini officers could stop him. She did not. A police officer pried the cigarette from her lips just in time, and in that single accidental act, the secret architecture of one of the most closed surveillance states on Earth cracked open to the outside world for the very first time. Her name,
how long can you maintain
this
facade?
Was Kim Hyun-Hui.
We understand the conditioning, but we also know about the cracks.
She had been shaped,
tell us the
trained,
truth,
and weaponized inside a hidden compound built specifically to manufacture loyal instruments of the Kim family's power. What she would eventually reveal, piece by piece, under interrogation, and then in her own testimony,
I will tell you
was
everything I know about the organization.
It was a window into the inner mechanics of a regime that watches its own people every hour of every day, and that builds entire human lives around the singular purpose of protecting and serving a leader whose face citizens are forbidden to question. This is a story about that machine.
I did not know it was wrong.
About the women who were absorbed
into
it.
I only followed the directives.
What it cost the ones
who gave the directives?
Tried to climb back out. Before we go further into how deep this rabbit hole goes, if stories about real defectors, real spies, and the hidden machinery of authoritarian states are the kind of history that keeps you up at night thinking, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the notification bell, because we are about to walk through declassified testimony, intelligence assessments, and documented defector accounts that very few people outside of Seoul's intelligence community have ever pieced together in one place. You will not want to miss what comes next. To understand how a teenage girl from Pyongyang could end up at the center of an international terrorism case, you first have to understand the system that built her. North Korea, since its founding in 1948 under Kim Il-sung, was never simply governed. It was watched, layer upon layer, citizen upon citizen, in a structure of surveillance so total that ordinary neighborhood life itself became an extension of the secret police. At the base of this system sits the Inminban, a neighborhood watch unit that exists in every residential block in the country, where a designated leader, almost always a woman, tracks who enters and leaves each household, who has overnight guests, and who fails to attend the mandatory self-criticism sessions held for ordinary citizens. Above that sits the Songbun system, a hereditary classification that sorts every person in North Korea into one of 3 broad castes, and then further into dozens of finely graded subclasses, based on what their ancestors did during the Korean War and the early years of the regime. Songbun determines where you can live, what job you can hold, whether you can attend university, and whether you will ever be trusted with access to the country's elite
The structure was vast, designed to shield the men at the top,
sits an entirely separate
but the connections were undeniable.
One built solely around the physical protection, daily comfort, and absolute loyalty of the Kim family itself. That world has a name. It is called the Supreme Guard Command, sometimes referred to by defectors as Unit 963, the Escort Bureau, or simply the Guard Command. Its origins trace back to 1946.
The eastern sector remains
just 2
vulnerable.
years before the
we moved the 3rd Battalion here by
Korea,
0400.
When Kim Il-sung
ensure command structure is
first
finalized before the mobilization.
A protective unit around himself. Over the following decades, the command grew into a vast and highly compartmentalized organization, eventually splitting into separate sections, with one branch historically tasked with protecting Kim Il-sung, a second branch known as the 2.16 Unit, named after Kim Jong-il's birthday, dedicated to protecting him, and in the current era, a designation known as Unit 974, specifically charged with the protection of Kim Jong-Un. According to the testimony of North Korean defector Lee Young-kook, who served for years inside this apparatus, recruiters for the Guard Command actively scout for new members inside high schools, with a particular focus on what are internally known as number 1 schools, elite institutions reserved for the children of loyal cadres. Recruits are overwhelmingly drawn from families with spotless songbun records. The children of soldiers, farmers, and laborers from rural communities, whose loyalty is presumed to run deeper than that of the educated urban elite. Once selected, recruits are given an identification number, and their personal records are effectively erased. Contact with their own families is forbidden for a minimum of 12 to 13 years. Only one member of any given family is permitted to serve inside the Guard Command at any time, a rule designed to prevent any single household from becoming powerful enough or informed enough to threaten the system from within. The training these recruits undergo is built for total submission. Defector accounts describe a regimen of taekwondo instruction, marksmanship training, 25-kilometer marches conducted in full combat gear, and specialized tactics drawn from a 300-page internal training manual that catalogs every known historical threat and security incident the leadership has ever faced. The psychological dimension runs even deeper than the physical one. Recruits are taught, quite literally, that their own deaths are a smaller concern than the safety of the leader they protect. A former bodyguard who served Kim Jong-il for more than a decade and later spoke under the alias Kong Jin, described the doctrine in blunt terms. If the leader dies, the guard dies too. Only the dead, he was told, keep secrets. For 13 years, Kong rotated through some of the regime's most sensitive and secretive residences, compounds in Wonsan, Songam, and Chungseong that exist entirely outside the awareness of the North Korean public, built for banquets, private screenings, and a level of luxury that stands in grotesque contrast to the chronic food shortages experienced by ordinary citizens just outside the gates. Kong and guards like him were explicitly forbidden from entering the inner chambers where the leader actually lived. Their function was to encircle the secret, never to witness it. We stood watch, he said. We could hear the music, but we never entered. Our role was to keep the secret. It was into an adjacent but equally secretive layer of this protective architecture that a different kind of recruit was drawn in 1980, not into the Guard Command itself, but into North Korea's External Intelligence Service, an organization tasked not with standing physically beside the leader, but with eliminating threats to his legitimacy anywhere in the world. Her name, at the time, was simply a university student studying Japanese at the Pyongyang Foreign Language College. She had been a gifted child, the daughter of a career diplomat whose work had taken the family briefly to Cuba. She had trained as an actress and had even starred in one of North Korea's earliest Technicolor propaganda films. In 1972, as a child, she had been selected for the honor of presenting flowers to a senior South Korean delegate during a rare round of inter-Korean talks held in Pyongyang. By every external measure, she was exactly the kind of citizen the regime wanted to keep close. And in 1980, North Korean intelligence officers came looking for her. She was given a new name, Okwa, and relocated to a secluded compound outside Pyongyang that she would later describe, in testimony no other source has ever corroborated by name, as Kyumsung Military College. There, for the next 7 years, an entire curriculum was constructed around turning her into an instrument of the state's most extreme operations. She trained in martial arts and physical conditioning. She spent 3 years immersed in intensive Japanese language instruction, taught by a native speaker who had not chosen to be there. That instructor's name was Yaiko Taguchi, a Japanese citizen who had been abducted by North Korean agents years earlier after dropping her children off at school. One of a number of Japanese nationals kidnapped during this period as part of a long-running North Korean program to acquire native-level language skills and cultural cover identities for its overseas operatives. To the young trainee, Taguchi was introduced only by a Korean alias, Lee Un-hai. The cruelty embedded inside that single relationship, an abducted woman teaching the language of her own captivity to a young operative being shaped for the same system that had stolen her, captures something essential about how completely this machine consumed the people who passed through it, instructors and students alike. At the end of her 7 years of training, the young agent underwent a final examination that required her to infiltrate a mock embassy and successfully memorize a planted document, the culmination of nearly a decade spent learning to disappear inside other identities. She was then sent to Portuguese-administered Macau to learn Cantonese, refining her ability to pose convincingly as a Chinese national whenever a mission required it. By 1987, the geopolitical stakes surrounding the Korean Peninsula had reached a fever pitch. South Korea had been awarded the right to host the 1988 Summer Olympic Games in Seoul, an event the North Korean leadership viewed as an unbearable propaganda victory for its rival. A global stage that would showcase Seoul's prosperity and international legitimacy to the entire world, while North Korea remained isolated and impoverished. According to her own later testimony, the order to disrupt the games came directly from Kim Jong-Un,
Extraction by 0400 hours.
Delivered as a handwritten directive. The mission: place a bomb aboard a Korean air passenger flight, destroy it mid-air, and create enough fear around South Korean aviation and security to discourage international teams from traveling to the Olympics the following year. She was paired once again with an older operative, a man in his 70s, recovering from a stomach operation, who would pose publicly as her father. The two of them were issued forged Japanese passports under invented identities. Mayumi Hachiya for her, Shinichi Hachiya for him, and instructed to travel through Europe as ordinary tourists, a young woman touring the continent with her elderly father, nothing more. Their route carried them through Moscow,
Ramp 4, confirm all doors secure. We have clearance for pushback in 5.
Where North Korean intelligence officers were waiting with the components needed to complete the mission. A timer device and explosive material concealed inside what looked like an ordinary portable radio, further hidden inside a liquor bottle. From Belgrade, the pair flew on toward Baghdad, and on November 28, 1987, they boarded Korean Air Flight 858 in the Iraqi capital, carrying their disguised explosive device on board as checked luggage. At a scheduled stopover in Abu Dhabi, both operatives disembarked, their mission already complete, leaving the bomb behind in an overhead luggage rack as the aircraft continued onward toward its eventual destination of Seoul. The flight never made it. Roughly 9 hours after the device was planted, it detonated over the Andaman Sea, bringing the aircraft down and killing all 115 people aboard, the overwhelming majority of them South Korean citizens. What the two operatives did not know, as they checked into a hotel in Bahrain to wait for a connecting flight home, was that international aviation security networks were already closing in around them. Their forged passports had drawn suspicion from Japanese officials, who flagged the documents as connected to a known pattern of passport irregularities. Word reached embassies across the region, including South Korea's, the United States, Japan's, and the United Kingdom's, and a coordinated effort began to track the pair's movements before they could vanish back into North Korean territory.
Explain your
On
prolonged
December
stay.
1st,
And these stamps,
1987,
they do not match the
as they
authorized
approached an
crossings we have
immigration
on file.
counter at
Your
Bahrain
passports, please.
International Airport,
Where are you traveling from?
attempting to board a connecting
Pyongyang,
flight.
via Moscow.
Police
We are
and a
expected.
South Korean diplomatic official who had been waiting nearby stepped forward and pulled them aside. In that instant, Both operatives reached for cyanide capsules concealed inside ordinary-looking cigarettes, a final failsafe built into every mission of this kind, designed to ensure that a captured agent could never be interrogated, never expose the structure that had created them, never become a liability to the regime that sent them. The older man succeeded. He bit down, and he died within moments, taking with him whatever knowledge he carried about the operation's full chain of command. The young woman did not get the chance. A Bahraini police officer, reacting with a speed that would alter the entire trajectory of this story, snatched the cigarette from her mouth before the poison could finish its work. She survived, hospitalized, and then transferred into the custody of investigators who had no idea, in that first hour, just how much she actually knew. What followed was an extended campaign of denial.
The truth is in this document.
She initially insisted she was a Japanese orphan.
We know you are
named
lying.
Pai Chui Hui,
Right here.
raised in northern
The
China.
lamination is slightly
Traveling
off,
Europe with
and the
an elderly
name,
companion
Mayumi
she barely
Hachia,
knew.
is clearly an
But the
alias.
fabrication had
佢真正
cracks
仔係
that
分證我
trained
姐嘅雙型，
interrogators were quick to
所以
find.
你一定要
The
小
only
心啲
Chinese
鏡嘅。
dialect she could actually speak was Cantonese,
Look
a
here.
language confined
The northern
almost
provinces are
entirely to southern
compromised,
China,
yet the
and
south remained
impossible in
open.
consistency
This
for someone
contradiction
claiming
is
northern
unacceptable.
Chinese origins. South Korean authorities, working urgently in the lead-up to the Seoul Olympics, pressed for her extradition from Bahrain, a country that, lacking a death penalty of its own, was initially hesitant to hand her over for a capital case. After a series of high-level diplomatic exchanges, including direct assurances from Bahrain's foreign minister in early December, she was flown to Seoul under heavy guard, her mouth taped shut to prevent any further suicide attempt during the journey. It was only over an extended interrogation
I didn't
process
mean for it to happen.
conducted by South
It was an
Korea's
accident, I
intelligence
swear.
services that the true depth of the system she had emerged from finally
I didn't know
surfaced.
what was in the package.
Investigators
I swear.
noted that her
I was just
dialect
following
carried
instructions.
unmistakable traces of Pyongyang origin, and the sophistication of her tradecraft, her cover identities, her physical training, her capacity to withstand sustained psychological pressure, pointed unmistakably toward an elite intelligence apparatus rather than any improvised criminal scheme. She eventually confessed, identifying herself by her true name, Kim Hyeon Hui, and detailing the 7 years of indoctrination and training she had undergone inside North Korea's intelligence pipeline. The same broad surveillance and security ecosystem
This section here,
that
the
also
Inminban
produces
system,
the
is
Supreme
intrinsically
Guard
linked to the
Command's
Supreme
bodyguards,
Guard. And this
the
is where we
Inminban
believe the
block
leadership
monitors,
maintains its slush
and the
fund
Songbun
operations.
classification system that had first marked her as suitable material for state service. She would later testify that she had been led to believe the bombing served the cause of eventual Korean reunification,
We know you were there.
that ordinary lives
Tell us
lost
who you
aboard
met.
the flight were a
The party
necessary
expects
sacrifice
loyalty,
toward a larger
yet you sit here
ideological goal,
defying the state.
and that any flicker of
Tell us who
doubt
you
or
met at the
hesitation
embassy.
she felt in the moment was itself dangerous. Evidence of ideological corruption that could have gotten her executed or sent to a labor camp had it surfaced back home. In March 1989, a South Korean court sentenced her to death for her role in the bombing.
The truth is
But
etched
later
in these
that
papers,
same year,
comrade.
President
Your
Roh
silence only
Tae-woo
complicates
issued a
matters.
formal pardon,
Who sent you across the
reasoning
border?
publicly that she herself had been a victim, a young woman brainwashed and weaponized by a regime that bore the true moral responsibility for what had happened. She was given the option to return to North Korea. She chose instead to remain in South Korea and defect permanently, becoming one of the most significant intelligence assets the South Korean government had ever acquired. Not because she had access to military secrets, but because she had lived, breathed, and nearly died inside the exact machinery the world outside North Korea understood so little about. She later married a South Korean official who had been involved in handling her case, and the two built a family together, even as she has spent every year since under the documented shadow of assassination threats that intelligence assessments treat as entirely credible. As recently as 2018,
They told us the world wanted to
in the lead-up
destroy
to
us.
the Pyeongchang Winter
We
Olympics,
believed them.
she gave interviews
Because the
warning
alternative
that she
was
still
too
believed
frightening to
herself to be
consider.
on a North Korean target list, and that she continued to live under protective security measures decades after her defection. Meanwhile, The family she left behind inside North Korea paid the price the regime always extracts from those who escape its grip. Reports indicate they were arrested and sent to labor camps, a documented pattern that North Korean defectors describe again and again, in which the punishment for one person's freedom is collective, inherited by the relatives who remain trapped inside the system. Kim Hyun-hui's case, devastating as it is not an isolated artifact of the 1980s. It is a permanent feature of how the Kim dynasty maintains control, and it is only intensified under the current leader. In early November 2012, less than a year after Kim Jong-Un formally assumed power following his father's death, North Korea's Ministry of State Security made a directive that would reshape the entire surveillance relationship between the regime and its diaspora of escapees. The ministry set an explicit internal goal: reduce illegal border crossings and defections to zero. Counterintelligence branches stationed along the China-North Korea border, particularly in Yangon province, were ordered to build out an entirely new layer of human intelligence, one designed not to stop defectors at the border, but to follow them after they had already escaped, embedding spies among the defector communities.
It's so cold outside, but the
China
tea is wonderful.
and South Korea.
Yes, it warms you right up.
One of the most chillingly effective products
Just
of that
another week.
2012 directive was a young woman recruited and trained under conditions documented by South Korean and North Korean human rights researchers, who went undercover through human trafficking networks into China, posing convincingly as an ordinary defector herself. Operating under a pseudonym used in reporting on her case, she lived with a Chinese man in Changbai for 8 years as her
They
cover,
know we are here.
building
The
friendships
contact
and
never
trust
arrived.
within real defector
We must
networks,
assume the worst and
communicating
relocate
with other
immediately.
escapees in person and through messaging platforms, all while quietly reporting their personal details, movements, and intentions back to her handlers inside the Ministry of State Security's provincial branch. When she had extracted what she needed from one region, she would simply disappear and resurface somewhere new, moving in turn through Jilin, Liaoning, Heilongjiang, and Inner
The noodles
Mongolia,
are better today than yesterday.
always gravitating
Yes,
toward
but the broth
communities
is too
with large
salty.
populations of female defectors.
Did you finish the
A
paperwork?
demographic that, by the late 2010s, made up the overwhelming majority of all North Koreans fleeing the country. In a single 6-month stretch in 2019 alone, her work directly assisted in the kidnapping of 40 defectors who believed they had finally found safety. For this, she received a third-class medal and a formal commendation from her provincial security branch, recognition as one of the regime's most accomplished assets in a program explicitly built to convert the act of surveillance into a tool of recapture. This pattern of weaponized infiltration did not end with that
Did you
single
send the
case.
message?
The phone is compromised.
South Korean
we have to
media
move.
later disclosed an entirely separate
They are watching
operation
the North Pass.
involving a woman who began working undercover
고위
for North
관계자들이
Korean
연루된 것으로
intelligence
보이는
in
대규모 데이터 유출
2016.
사건이 발생했습니다.
After the
현재
Ministry
검찰이
of State
수사에
Security
착수했습니다.
identified her existing experience acting as a money broker between defector families and their relatives still inside North Korea, a role that gave her natural, trusted access to the defector community's most sensitive financial and personal networks. 2 years later, in 2018, she staged her own defection to South Korea, walking directly into the very refugee resettlement system designed to protect people like her, all while continuing to operate under instructions from Pyongyang. Investigators and journalists came to refer to her case by the code name later disclosed in court proceedings.
We appreciate you
Agent
coming out in this weather.
Chrysanthemum.
Everything seems to
Her
be in order here.
documented task was
Good, we can
straightforward
finalize the
and
details
insidious. Persuade existing defectors through manipulation, coercion, and false information about money or family emergencies to voluntarily return
Don't make
across
things
the
harder
border
than they need to
into
be.
North Korean custody.
We've arranged
An outcome
everything
the
for your
regime
return.
could then exploit for propaganda purposes, parading the returnee on state television as proof that life in the capitalist South was a trap rather than a liberation. She was eventually indicted in a South Korean court in Suwon, where she confessed to her role, becoming featuring the latest entry in a documented lineage of female North Korean operatives discovered living inside South Korean
The lineage
defector
of documented
communities.
female
A
operatives,
lineage that South
stretching
Korean
back through the
researchers
Cold War
traced
years.
back through earlier cases, including operatives identified as Lee Sun-sil in 1992 and Won Jung-hwa in 2008. This is the broader truth that the Kim Hyun-hui case first exposed to the world back in 1987, and that successive defector testimonies have only continued to confirm in the decades since. North Korea's surveillance apparatus does not end at its own borders. It is designed to follow its targets wherever they go, to recruit from within the very population it has driven into exile, and to treat every successful escape not as a closed case, but as an open one, a thread to be pulled until the person who fled is either silenced, recaptured, or permanently destabilized by the fear that they were never truly free at all. South Korea's Ministry of Unification has documented that since 2012, only 25 defectors out of more than 10,000 have voluntarily returned to North Korea, a number so small that researchers and intelligence officials alike treat any high-profile return with deep suspicion. 5 of those 25 later managed to escape back to the south a second time. Evidence, investigators argue, that their original return was never truly voluntary in the first place. The story of Lim Ji-hyun illustrates exactly how this machinery operates in the modern era. She had built a new life in Seoul after defecting in 2014, becoming a minor celebrity through appearances on South Korean reality television programs.
I apologize for my
centered on
crimes
the
against the
experiences
state.
of North Korean defectors.
I was misled by the decadent
Then, without
influences from
warning,
outside the
she
Republic.
vanished. Weeks later,
want to
she
assure everyone
resurfaced
that I
on
am
North
safe and
Korean state
healthy.
propaganda,
I have
calling
learned the
herself by a
truth
new
here.
name and tearfully denouncing her time in South Korea as a hellish ordeal of poverty and exploitation. South Korean police investigators came to believe she had been lured back across the border under a manufactured pretext, told that a substantial sum of money she had tried to send to her family through a Chinese broker had mysteriously gone missing. A trap designed to draw her close enough
The
to
man
the
in the
border
leather jacket,
for
he
North
hasn't
Korean
returned.
agents to seize
No,
her.
not since this
Her
morning.
case sent a chilling message through the entire defector community in Seoul.
Did you see the look on his
As
face
one
where
of her
she
friends,
said that?
I know, I almost couldn't
identified
keep a
and
straight
reporting only
face.
by the pseudonym Sun High,
We should definitely go
put
back
it
there next
afterward.
week.
They
Is
had
this
believed
safe?
they were
Are you sure we
finally
weren't
safe,
followed?
The
only
lamp
to
is our
realize
sign.
they had to look
We are
over their
safe for now.
shoulders constantly.
But time is
uncertain
running out.
whether the woman
The tea is
sitting
really
next to
good
them
today,
at a community
organization.
gathering
You
might be
always say that.
exactly what so many
It is
turned
warm
out
in
to
here.
be.
Did you hear about the
Another
market
product
opening
of the
tomorrow?
same surveillance machine they thought they had escaped. What ties Kim Hyun-hui's 1987 confession to the more recent cases of Agent Chrysanthemum and the unnamed operative who infiltrated defector networks across 4 Chinese provinces is not coincidence. It is continuity. The same hereditary songbun system that once identified a talented young Pyongyang student as ideal material for an intelligence career under Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il is the same classification structure still used today to select, train, and deploy operatives under Kim Jong-un. The same compartmentalized secrecy that kept Supreme Guard Command bodyguards from ever entering the rooms they protected is the same secrecy that allowed an entire spy program to operate inside defector communities for years without detection.
Be careful
And
with
the
the door
same
tonight.
psychological conditioning
Yes,
that
the
taught a
patrols are
teenage girl
frequent.
to treat doubt itself as
Eat
a
up, we
punishable
leave early.
offense is the conditioning that, decades later, still produces operatives willing to spend 8 years of their lives undercover, willing to accept
증거는
the
명확해.
destruction of 40
그냥
strangers'
자백해.
hopes of freedom in
저는 안
exchange
했어요.
for a medal.
맹세합니다.
What makes Kim Hyun-hui's case the one that broke this system open to outside scrutiny is not simply that she survived an assassination attempt on herself in a Bahrain interrogation room. It is that her survival forced South Korean intelligence, and through them, the
Repeat
watching
after me.
world, to
The
reconstruct
rain
an
in
entire
Spain
hidden
stays
curriculum,
mainly in the plain.
the 7-year training pipeline,
I can speak English.
the abducted foreign instructors, the mock embassy infiltration exercises, the layered cover identities, piece by piece, almost entirely from the testimony of one defector who had lived inside it. Every detail she provided became a kind of map, one that intelligence analysts have spent the decades since cross-referencing against the testimony of later defectors.
We followed the orders
Bodyguards
exactly
like
as they
Lee
were
Young
given.
Cook and Kang Jin
The records confirm
describing
this.
the Guard Command's training
We have nothing
camps,
more to add.
to Daily NK's documented reporting on the Ministry of State Security's province-by-province campaign to drive defections to zero. Each new account fills in another section of a structure that the regime has spent 80 years trying to keep entirely invisible. A structure built around one unbreakable principle: that no citizen, however gifted, however trusted, however close to the center of power they are allowed to stand, is ever permitted to belong fully to themselves. That, in the end, may be the most lasting revelation
started that
buried
night.
inside this story. The North Korean surveillance
keep
state
this
did not
secret
simply
anymore.
fail to protect Kim Hyun-hue from becoming a killer at 25 years old. It built her for that exact purpose, using methods specifically engineered to override the very instincts, empathy, hesitation, individual conscience that might otherwise have stopped her. And when those methods finally cracked, not because of a change of heart inside the compound, but because of a single police officer's reflexes in an airport terminal in Bahrain, what spilled out was not just one woman's confession. It was confirmation
Repeat
that an
after
entire
me.
society had been
Neko.
organized. From the neighborhood watch leader,
Tori.
monitoring overnight guests,
yoku
to the
dekimashita.
elite intelligence academy training operatives in foreign languages and mock infiltrations around a single totalizing purpose.
Did you get the message
Ensuring
through?
that the
Yes,
family
but they cut
at
the line.
top of North Korea's hierarchy
Here, take this.
would never face a threat it did not see coming, and never face one that could not, eventually, be silenced. Decades later, with newer surveillance operatives still being uncovered inside defector communities in Seoul, the machine Kim Hyun-hue, first exposed to the world in 1987,
machine
has not been
persists.
dismantled.
The
It
border
has simply
holds.
evolved, finding new women, new cover identities, and new borders to cross, in service of the same surveillance state it has always served. Consider the numbers that researchers have assembled around this single, narrow question of how many people actually manage to break free of that system and stay free. At its peak in 2009, just over 2,900 North Korean defectors successfully registered with South Korea's unification ministry in a single year. By the time Kim Jong-Un had consolidated several years of rule, that number had collapsed to a small fraction of its former size, a direct, measurable result of exactly the kind of
found the
expanded
location.
border
We have
surveillance,
less than an hour.
internal informant networks,
What about
and
the documents?
cross-border
Agent
infiltration
Kim has them.
operations. This
She's
story
waiting
is
for the
traced
signal.
from the Supreme Guard Command's recruitment pipelines down to the work of operatives like Agent Chrysanthemum. Throughout the 2010s,
The data was clear.
women consistently made up the
81%
overwhelming
were
majority
women.
of those who did manage
A
to
fact
escape,
that raised more
accounting
questions
for as
than it
much as
answered.
81% of registered defectors in certain years. A demographic reality shaped by the gendered economics of North Korean society itself.
We have to leave now.
Women
She's
have
watching us.
historically faced fewer formal
Are you sure
employment
she knows?
obligations than men inside North Korea's state labor system, leaving them comparatively freer to attempt the dangerous river crossings into China, even as that same freedom made them disproportionately vulnerable to trafficking, exploitation, and the very recruitment pipelines this story has documented. The pipelines that quietly convert escaped women into the next generation of operatives sent back across the border to hunt the very community that took them in. It is worth sitting for a moment with what this means for every North Korean defector currently living inside Seoul, Incheon, or any of the dozens of smaller communities scattered across South Korea and the wider world. Each of them has crossed a river, a desert, or an ocean to escape a state that Kim Hyun-hue's
This file contains
testimony
the complete record
first
of the
taught
incident.
the world to understand.
If this information
from
is
the
leaked,
inside.
the consequences
And each
will
of
be
them
severe.
now lives inside a community that South Korean intelligence assessments confirm has been infiltrated, repeatedly, by operatives indistinguishable from themselves, trained inside the same broad apparatus that once turned a flower-presenting schoolgirl into a convicted mass murderer, and that, more recently, turned a money broker into a recruiter and a trafficked woman into an 8-year mole embedded across 4 Chinese provinces.
I remember
Defectors
this
who
day.
built friendships, who shared
We never
apartments,
thought we would
who
leave.
trusted each other enough to exchange
Look how
phone
young
numbers
we were then.
and photographs of family members still trapped behind the border, did so without ever being able to fully verify who, among the people standing beside them, might still be reporting back to Pyongyang. This is precisely why Lim Ji-hyun's disappearance landed with such force inside that community in 2017. It was not simply the loss of a single woman who had, for a few years, represented a kind of hope, proof that escape was possible, and that a new life on the other side could include television
The
appearances,
South Korean puppets
friendships,
continue their
and a
aggressive
public
military
voice.
exercises near the
It was the
border.
realization
We urge
that the
them to
very
cease
visibility
immediately.
which made her valuable as a symbol of freedom was the same visibility that made her a target. Intelligence officials and researchers who study North Korean coercion tactics have noted that the regime has a long, documented history of treating high-profile defectors as priority targets precisely because of their platform. Every interview Lim gave, every detail she shared about ordinary consumer life,
저는 우리
about the
공화국에서
simple
태어난 것을
availability of
정말
food,
자랑스럽게 생각합니다.
electricity, and freedom of movement in the South, functioned as a direct
이 쌀은
rebuttal
어디서
to
났어요?
decades of state
시장에서요.
propaganda, insisting
신분증을
that South
보여줘야
Korea
했어요.
was a land of suffering and American subjugation. Female defectors in particular, researchers note, often become the most effective whistleblowers precisely because their testimony focuses on the texture of daily life rather than abstract politics. The small, devastating details that ordinary North Korean citizens can recognize as true. That effectiveness is exactly what made Lim, and women like her, worth the considerable operational risk of a cross-border abduction. There is a final thread worth pulling before this story closes, because it loops directly back to where it began, inside the Supreme Guard Command itself. That organization, the one responsible for shielding Kim Jong-un's body from any physical threat, is overseen internally by a Workers' Party body known as Office 80, nested inside the party's organization and guidance department, the same bureaucratic lineage that has historically supervised North Korea's surveillance and personnel loyalty systems writ large. Defectors who served inside the Guard Command describe an organization obsessed not only with external threats, but with numerology and superstition passed down through the ruling family itself, reflected even in the command's internal designation as Unit 963, a number defectors say was chosen because 9 is considered a lucky digit within the dynasty's belief system. It is a small, almost absurd detail, but it captures something true about the entire structure this story has walked through. A regime that polices its citizens' private conversations, classifies their worth by ancestry, and selects its most promising young women for assignments that will consume 7 years of their lives in service of an assassination, is, underneath all of that brutal efficiency, still run by a family anxious enough about its own survival to build superstition directly into its chain of command. The fear runs in both directions. It is precisely because the Kim family understands how easily their own system could be turned against them. The way Kim Hyeon-hui's testimony eventually was, the way every successful defection chips
play
away
games
at the
with us.
myth the regime
truth
depends
now.
on, that they have spent
were you
80
working
years
for?
building, refining, and exporting a surveillance machine that follows its targets across rivers, deserts, and oceans, into the very heart of the free societies. Its escapees believed would finally keep them safe.